Hi, I am Stephanie Hoi-Nga Wong. Hoi-Nga is my Cantonese name, and my Mandarin name is Huang Kaya. I'm a holistic parent coach. I work with the mind and body. I support stressed out clients and executives and help them develop a deeper understanding about themselves so they know the best way to navigate through parenthood. I also help them to reduce stress and anxiety. I don't give parenting tips because everyone is so different. Every child is so different. So there's no one size fits all formula. But I do believe that parents they all can share the wisdom and share their parenting journey. So, which is why I decided to create some videos and audios asking parents to share their parenting journey. We all have something to give and inspire, right? And this is my first video, and my first guest is Shaun Rein. Now, Shaun is the founder of China Market Research Group based in Shanghai, China. It's a strategic consultancy that targets consumer. His clients include KFC and Fidelity. It's a company that he started when he was 27 years old. Amazing, right? And he has written 4 books, including The War for China's Wallet, Profiting from the New World Order, The End of Cheap China, and The End of Copycat China. Shaun is currently writing his 5th book as well. Amazing. I met Shaun more than 10 years ago when I was working as a journalist in Shanghai. Recently, I came across his LinkedIn post that really grabbed my attention. In his post, Shaun said his son was producing his first speaker, I don't know what is first, called Base Bean Plus, and he's just got his first corporate order too. Instead of taking a Chinese New Year celebration vacation that lasts for a week, his son assembled the speakers in his lab to make sure he produced by the client's deadline. Now, it's amazing because Shaun's son is only 14 years old. He has to deal with all the tax issues and legal issues relating to his patent he got. So I got so interested in his story. I contacted Shaun and invited him to do this recording with me. I'm so glad he agreed. Thank you for coming on, Shaun.
Stephanie, it's great to see you again after all these years. And thank you for the very nice words about myself and my career, as well as my son, as he's just starting to learn how to be an inventor. As you mentioned, he builds a lot of things. So he's built drones from scratch, and he's actually been into speakers for almost 5-6 years now, since he was the age of 8. He actually started building speakers out of cardboard and tape. And he did that for years, always improving. And then life changed when we bought him a 3D printer, and he was actually able to make a speaker that looked quite professional. But anyway, it's great to be here today and talk to you and talk to your audience.
Thank you. It's amazing. Drone and speakers. And how exactly did you help your son to develop his product and even land his first corporate order for his speaker?
Well, I think to be very clear, I am not a perfect father. Okay, I've made a lot of mistakes. So I think some of what I am sharing today is the lessons that I've learned from failing and not doing well. And I think one of the things that what I found is people don't always tell each other how hard it is to be a parent and how stressful it is. And I can assure you, and I can assure everybody listening, that being a parent is very stressful and very difficult. And I don't know anyone who is having an easy go of it. Now, it might seem like it. They might post, pictures of their kid winning a debate tournament or coming in #1 in a math test onto WeChat Moments or in the United States and something like Instagram. But I got to tell you, they're only posting the perfect. So at the end of the day, we're all struggling through on how to be the best parent. And I'm still learning, but I'm happy to share today some of my experiences.
Yeah, I know. I feel all the time like parenting is like learning on the job. There are books around, but it's like how do you do it, right? Like I said, we're all different. Your child is different. So exactly how do you guide him into doing all this, produces like get patents and create.
I want to pick up on a word that you said, and that word is different. And I think it's important to say all children are different. And one of the problems I have with the school systems, not just in China, but in the United States and globally, is that they're too rigid. Too many school systems, they have a curriculum where they're almost training each kid almost as if they're robots to learn the exact same things and just sort of push forward. Now, my son is very different. And we found that at age 5, where his kindergarten teacher came up to us and said, you know, I've been teaching for 20 years. Your son is the most difficult student I've ever had. And that's when we started to realize that he views the world differently and that just a pure regular academic curriculum wasn't enough. Now, he gets good grades now. He didn't always get good grades, but as he's matured, he's realized the importance of getting good grades, and he didn't listen to us. If we said get good grades, he would rebel and say no. So once we backed off and sort of let him do his own thing, that's when he started getting good grades, because he realized he needed that to get into the right prep school or into the right college.
I see.
Let's take a step back. How did we sort of challenge him? In many ways, Stephanie, he came to us, right? And he was different. So we had set him up to do debate class. We had set him up to do math class, basketball, squash, you know, every single type of extracurricular activity. But at the end of the day, Stephanie, he came to us and said, you know what, Mama, Baba, I've been watching on YouTube how to build things. This is what I'm interested in. And so we pushed him for it. Now, I am a consultant and I write. My wife is a former investment banker and an investor. We don't have any experience in engineering. We don't have any experience in science. So we actually tried to set him up for the after-school training programs where they build like Lego robots and stuff. Yeah. He hated it. Absolutely hated it. He said, this is just like school. I don't want to be making Lego robots. I want to be making real things. And this is when we realized, Stephanie, we had to think out of the box. And we had to go out of the typical training because my son is so different. So what we did was we found an entrepreneur, a young guy who's fabulous. He actually dropped out of college and he set up his own company building consumer electronics. And he's done very well. He was a young guy. He was probably only 19, 20 when we found him. And we said, could you help our kid? And so they would have weekly sessions. And what was important was, I think for my son, he was able to see someone who was actually building something real life, something meaningful, something tangible. While when he went to school or the regular classes, they're making Legos, or really in what my son said was kiddie stuff. So he liked working with an entrepreneur who was building real things. That got him really excited about what the potential there was out there. And basically every couple months they would do a new project together, you know, build a circuit. And he would challenge my son into building something. It wasn't that hands-on instructional. He would say, okay, I would like you to build something, go build it. And my son would then go out and build it. You know, there was one that was a little remote control that could turn televisions off. And so, you know, they would go around and turn televisions in the neighbors.
Cool. Oh, really?
Be a little naughty, you know, nothing too bad, but
hey, but it's fun.
It made him a little excited. He could go up and just like, you know, turn somebody's TV off. So it was that type of little thing that you would never get in a formal, in a school, obviously, or even an after school program, where you could be a little bit naughty, have a lot of fun building things like that. And for the parents, it was good because we had a successful entrepreneur who was able to teach my son and teach me and my wife what type of products were good. So, you know, we have this, I'll show you right here. I prepared it. Oh. We have this DC adapter, which is a high voltage thing.
Okay.
And it was scary for us.
Yeah,
right?
exactly,
Because you don't
right?
want an 8, 9-year-old playing with a giant adapter and stuff. You know, this kind of thing.
So when he was building this, he was 8 and 9.
Yeah.
So there was like only a couple,
so,
like a couple of years ago. Yeah.
So by doing this, you know, the tutor was able to, or the entrepreneur was able to say to my son and to us, you're allowed to use this number of volts. You can use this level of power and electricity and make sure that it was safe.
Yeah. So that actually, that process actually taught you guys something, right? It's kind of like, don't just because you're scared, don't not let him do that, right? So you almost have trust in your son to do whatever it needs and work with entrepreneur to create this speaker.
Yeah, I think in my view, too many parents, and I would say ourselves included, sometimes are overly scared, and they try to control and maximize what the kids do. And I think at some point you just need to let the kids explore and make mistakes on their own and fail on their own. It's never good to always be perfect. I failed a lot in my career. I certainly failed a lot in school. And I would say I learned more about overcoming hardships than in winning all the way through. Now, I think for my son, that was true when he was building things. You know, he tried to build a car when he was like 8 years old. And in our house, a real car, you know, he spent a year trying to build a car out of wood and out of tape and metal and all kinds of things. And obviously it didn't work out. Now, it didn't move, but it was very comfortable to sit in. It had all kinds of lights.
That's so cool.
It was a failure, but it wasn't. You know, and for a while, my son was kind of upset about it. He goes, I didn't get the car to work. But a couple years later, he came up to me. And this is when he started building drones. And these are actual drones that go a kilometer high and can go 80 kilometers an hour.
Wow,
these
amazing.
are, you know, professional grade drones that he builds. And he said, Baba, I think the best learning was me failing at building the car, because I thought it was going to be so easy. And I had the dreams, and I realized that it wasn't so easy to make something mechanized. And I've learned from that, and I've taken those failures and those hardships into building my drone.
Wow.
And so that's exactly what you want to hear.
Yeah.
So you got to let the kids fail. You have to let them fail. And I find too many parents, especially mothers, in China anyway, don't like their kids to suffer. And I think it's okay. And he got some burns. You know, he's got a soldering iron and he burned himself here and there. And,
okay.
You know,
he
still has all of his fingers, knock on wood.
You're not dead yet. But when he failed, like when he make mistakes, how do you guide him? I mean, I think like you said quite rightly, a lot of us, well, I think we all love our kids, and we can be overprotective sometimes. And how do you deal with his disappointment, his upset, perhaps anger, and other kind of emotions that arise?
You know, I have to give credit to him. He never got that upset. If he failed, he would have the grit and determination to get up again and keep trying. You know, I think if you hug him, you give him a kiss and you tell him that's okay. That's basically all we did. He has his own determination on the projects that he likes. You know, and you can't, what I found is you can't teach a kid too much. They have to learn. It's like we'd yell at him, be safe, be safe, be safe. You know, we have goggles, we have this. He doesn't listen. It was only once he burned himself once. And that hurt. And he goes, ooh, I do have to be safe. So I think, again, this comes back to letting the kids just sort of go off on their own and figure out things. Honestly, I'm not a great father in many ways. I don't have great advice, Stephanie. It's in some ways my kid has succeeded in spite of me.
Hey, but I think we're all like that. We kind of always judge ourselves like, oh, we're not good enough, you know. But
I'll give another example. I'll give another example.
Yeah.
So we were pushy, right? The typical pushy parents. We signed him up for debate class when he was like 9 or 10 years old and forced him to go. And he hated it. You know, 9, 10 years old, sitting in debate class for 3 hours, and he'd roll around on the ground, he'd scream, he'd get into all kinds of trouble. So after 1 year of doing this, we quit. A couple years later, one of his cousins did a debate, and he watched, and he goes, well, she can do that. I can do that just as well, maybe even better. And so he asked us, that's good peer pressure, asked us to sign him up for debate again. And we were quite surprised. So we signed him up, and actually he came in #1 in Shanghai in one of the biggest tournaments. And he's one of the top ranked debaters in China right now. But that was all from him. Okay, when we tried to push him into something, he rebelled. It sort of always had to come on of his own volition, whether it be building science, whether it be debate, really anything. I think
Yeah.
you have to understand kids are kids. They have
Yeah.
underdeveloped brains.
Totally.
So you can't force them.
Yeah. It's a bit like my son now. I try to get him to do piano. He's doing very well, but then he doesn't like it. And I was like, oh, should I stop? What? Should I let him quit? You know, there's like all these like conflicts, these struggles. Like, what should I do now? Should I let him just take a break? It's just,
I
yeah.
have a
I was
Steinway
saying like,
downstairs that
wow,
nobody ever used.
who is it
I
for?
think he
Who is
took
it for?
lessons for like, you know, for maybe 3 weeks. We bought him a gigantic drum set. Luckily, we just sold it. You know, thank gosh, because that's not those electronic drum sets are not cheap. The piano's still sitting there.
At least it's a
I
good
think,
decoration, you know what I mean?
yeah, it's a nice decoration. But I think at the end of the day, just give kids the opportunity to try many different things, but you can't
Well,
push it. If you
well, we
push
should.
it, they end up rebelling.
Sure. So that, but at some point, you do need to give them resources. Like you invest in a Steinway, you have a strong kid, and when he's building drones and speakers, he has to have resources to buy the materials. Like what kind of resources did you share with him?
So we started off by anything that was education focused, we would pay for. And so we would buy him, he would go and so at first he would decide with the entrepreneur what parts he needed to buy for his first drone. He would buy the parts, start putting everything together. And again, this thing goes 80 kilometers an hour, and I don't know anything about science. So every couple of weeks or maybe every month or two, he would take the drone to the entrepreneur and have him look at it to make sure that he put everything together properly and coded everything properly. At first, honestly, Stephanie, we spent way too much money. Okay. My son would just want to buy the best of the best and make the greatest drone. And whenever we said keep costs down, he would get really angry. But this all changed. It changed when he started selling his speakers. And he would then sit there and he's selling his speakers for about 699 RMB, so about 120 US dollars right now.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, it's a good quality machine. And he would look at it and he really wanted to have a button. He really wanted on his last version a rubber button, but the rubber button would cost $8 US each. So he bought them and he put it all on all of his speakers. But you know what? When the button came, it was ugly. It didn't fit the aesthetics he wanted. It wasn't good quality control. When you pressed it, it wouldn't turn the button on well. And so he had to throw it out. Now for him, he lost a lot of money. He said, I wasted all of this. And so when he started selling, he started to realize, oh, wait a minute. I should have a budget. I should try to keep costs down, because the more I keep costs down, but the higher price I can sell, the fatter margin I can keep. And so that made him think about profits and budgeting. What it also made him do is think about design. All right, so now he's starting to think, do I really need to have this part in the product, or is it just an added cost? Do I really need to have this type of wrapping paper? And so he's actually going through the entire business plan process that I actually go through with my clients. We do a lot of work with luxury firms, and we spend a lot of time, and they pay us hundreds of thousands of US dollars to decide, do you need to use a nice cardboard box to wrap up a nice luxury handbag, or is it not needed? Because a box could cost $50. So he's going through that same process right now in budgeting. And so what's happened with that, Stephanie, is now when he's trying to get a new project, he'll pay for most of it on his own, from his own earnings. So he wants to sell the speakers and do new things. So right now he's interested in building a flying car. And for him to do that, he says, I need to sell a certain number of speakers in order to get enough money, because I can't ask you for 20,000 US dollars. I need to earn that on my own, and then I can start building the car.
That's what he wanted, right? He wanted to make the money himself rather than asking you for money. Is that right?
He thinks it's not fair, to always ask us. Now, again, 2 years ago, it was, Mama, Baba, why aren't you giving me more resources? You don't support my science. But now that he's grown up, he realized, oh, wait a minute, my mother and father really are good, but I should also put some funding into this. So he's really grown.
Yeah.
Grown on his own. And I think that's something a lot of parents don't realize, especially as a first-time parent. You want your kids to be perfect, and you're like, why are they behaving this way? But, eventually they get there. They understand the importance of school. They understand the importance of budgeting. They understand the importance of paying their own way and not relying on Mama and Baba for everything.
That's so interesting. Well, sometimes you all worry about what they're going to become in the future. Actually, sometimes it almost sounds like that just sorted itself out. You didn't have to worry about money because he somehow just realized he wants to fund it himself, not to rely on you and your wife.
I'm a believer that kids find their own way. And you have to sort of back them off. You don't see that many people who are that evil and bad and selfish when they come from good families who show love. I think one of the biggest struggles is making sure that the husband and wife, the mother and father, are aligned. Or if it's same-sex couples, whatever. But like as the parents, as long as they're aligned, that's not always easy. That's why a good coach can be helpful. Because very often the father has a view and the mother has a different view. And there's a real struggle trying to find common ground.
Now, how do you feel about the whole process now? Is there something that you didn't expect from your son and now he's doing it? Like anything that he surprised you during the whole process at all?
I was surprised at how much of his self-determination. I mean, he was watching YouTube, and at first we were really upset because he was watching things being blown up, and stupid videos that were not interesting, and we felt he was wasting too much time. But then we found him actually searching out useful things, how-to videos, how to build a speaker, how to build a light bulb, how to build all different types of things. And so I guess he took the initiative on his own. And I think that surprised me. Nobody in my family has any interest in engineering and science. I mean, I literally almost failed out of high school chemistry. I'm a consultant. My father's a ballet dancer. There is no background of consumer electronics in either my wife or my background. So he had to take the self-initiative. It's amazing how kids are so different.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Now you just talked about, you're a consultant, you're an investor, you're board members, and you're writing your 5th book, or I don't know whether it's finished, but you have a lot on. You've written 4 books.
I actually just signed a new book agent this morning. So
congrats.
The agent needs to go out and shop the book. So hopefully in the next several months, I'll sign a book contract. If not, then I have to come up with a new book idea.
That's great. That's great.
Getting an agent is the tough part. So I'm happy.
Good. Congratulations. But there's so much on your plate, though. How do you split the time between work and caring for your family and still have time to nurture your son? I'm sure your wife is doing a lot of it. But for you, how do you split time?
So I built my company and I own 100% of it. And I built it so that I could have a flexible life and family comes first. So actually, I start work at 5 in the morning every day. And I work a lot before my kid ever got up when he was little. And I used to pick him up at school almost every day at 3 o'clock, 3:30. So a lot of people, a lot of the other mothers mostly, and some fathers, but most of them thought I was unemployed because I was always with my kid. And then once he went back to sleep, I would then go back to work again. So I lead a very flexible schedule, always have a phone, even if I'm playing with him, I can reach something. But for me, family comes first. So I'm not the richest guy. Pre-COVID, I did pretty well. COVID has hit my business quite a bit, honestly. But pre-COVID, I earned enough money to live a good life, but I had the freedom to spend time with my son and take him around the world. You know, our goal was to take him to 10, 15 countries every year. So he's been all over. He's been to Africa 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
He's been to, I think, 4 times to Africa. He's been all over the Middle East, all over Europe, all over Australia. He went skydiving when he was
I
11
know,
years
remember.
old in New
Amazing.
Zealand. He jumped 15,000 feet when he was 11. So we've always wanted to push him to learn and respect other cultures, religions, ethnicities. And you know, I think what's interesting, Stephanie, is I think we almost spoiled him too much. And he didn't appreciate it. It was like every vacation we did a once in a lifetime trip, you know, and so we did basically 3 or 4 once in a lifetime trips a year. But one of the greatest things was a couple of weeks ago, I asked him, so what was your best memory in life? And he came to me, he's like, you know, Baba, I didn't appreciate the travel as much when I was younger. I took it for granted. But what you did for me, taking me around the world, that was really cool. You know, that's what you want to hear. So I think another lesson out of that is I think a lot of parents want their kids to appreciate what they do for them and not take things for granted, but they're not going to do that in real time. They'll do that maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years later. You know, and it's great now when we talk about that trip to Botswana or that trip to Oman or that skydiving trip to New Zealand or that trip to Canada or that trip to Paris. He remembers it all now and he appreciates it. So I'm not the richest guy in the world, but pre-COVID, I had the best job in the world, earned enough for my family and had enough flexibility to take them around. That's one part. The second part, I think, as an entrepreneur and as an executive, you have to stay really healthy. So I'm really into health and wellness. I've had a lot of physical problems. I was an athlete when I was growing up. And I think when I met you, I was using a cane. From the age of 25 to the age of 30, I was on a cane, crutches, or used a wheelchair. I actually broke my back. And so I was in a body cast for a year and I was in a lot of pain. So actually in my 20s, I got really fat. And in my early 30s, I was a large person. But once I was able to get some of my health back in place, health has been a really important part of my life. So I weight lift regularly, I do cardio and HIIT regularly, and I eat shockingly clean. You know, I'll have, you know, 8 almonds, 4 walnuts, raspberries, chia seeds, hemp seeds, sesame seeds every morning on Greek yogurt. And I'll eat the same thing. I think, you know, as a parent, you have to eat healthy and you have to exercise and you have to sleep. I sleep 8 to 10 hours a night.
Oh, wow. And you get up at 5 in the morning, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Wow. But I do agree, like to take care of ourselves as parents is so important, because if your cup is empty, how are you going to help anyone else? I mean, you don't have any energy for anything else. So yeah, I totally get it. It's like I have a similar experience too. So
yeah, the best advice I can give to mid-20-year-olds who are watching this is, you know, watch what you eat from your 20s. You know, very soon you go from thin and in shape to fat and in pain in 5, 10 years if you work too hard. You have to lead a balanced life. Work hard, make your money, but you also have to, don't sacrifice exercise and diet and sleep. It's hugely important because when you become a parent, you know, you're just constantly on the go and worrying. And if you don't have that me time of exercise, and if you don't have a body that can handle the pressure, you're going to collapse. And that's why you see so many miserable late 30s, early 40-year-olds who are just ragged tired from running after their kids and doing work and unable to take care of their own health.
Yeah, and I think especially kids too. I mean, I think all parents, we always complain we don't have enough time, and now we want to control the kid that can't be controlled in the first place, and that actually create a lot of stress in us. Yeah, so I totally understand what you're saying. Now, apart from staying healthy, what other advice would you give to parents who, well, my son is 9. Like, what advice would you give like to us or even people who have older kids?
Just love your kid, support and encourage, and he or she will get there. Don't worry too much. It's not an easy thing to say, but if you show them the path through a good model, they'll get there eventually. I mean, my son had all kinds of problems at school. You know, when he was younger, he was slow on math, slow on English, so bad, for instance, that he had to get the special teacher to sit with him in class because he was falling behind. And now I think he's straight. I think he's A's in both English and in math, you know, and that nothing changed. He just suddenly woke up one day and said, Baba, I need the credibility. If I want to go to MIT or a good college, then I realize I need to get good grades. And so he just started. Things work their way out.
Beautiful. And another question is, you talking about you have resources to share with him for him to experiment with different things. What, I mean, there will be people who say, well, because he has a parent like you, what if people don't have, other kids don't have that kind of resources? I mean, what kind of things, what would you say to parents who would say that to you?
Well, that's one of the reasons why Xi Jinping and China's government launched the Common Prosperity Drive in China. And they really went after the education and training sector. You know, a lot of people in the West view that as an evil Chinese communist government thing, but it actually is unfair that only wealthy parents were able to send their kids to training programs. And so that's why they had to restructure the whole training sector to make it fair. The reality is when you're building these projects, you know, you don't need that much money. Now, a drone you do, honestly, you know, but when you're building a lot of these other things, you can come up with a decent budget. And we started fairly cheaply for years. You know, we would give him 10 US dollars, 20 US dollars for the first several years for every time he had a project. Now we've gone into much higher levels. Well, like I said, he's actually trying to earn money for most of his stuff now, but it doesn't cost that much money to get a kid excited in something. Depends on what his passion is. But it's true. I mean, the cost can be expensive, and it's unfair in some countries that only rich people. Like if you want to do debate class, yeah, that's expensive. If you want to have one-on-one squash teaching, yeah, that is expensive. The good side is that the internet brings a lot of education for free to people. You know, YouTube is a better learning resource than I ever imagined.
Yeah, totally.
There's a lot more on there.
Yeah,
just like this video is going to go up on YouTube.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Shaun. Is there anything I've missed that you want to talk about before we end?
I think that's it, Stephanie. Good luck to everybody who's watching. You know, being a parent is not easy. If whenever you feel exhausted, feel stressed out and anxious, or feel like you just can't go on, truly know that every single person I know who's been a parent has felt the same way. They just won't show it publicly.
Yeah, I also find it's a rewarding experience. Before we have kids, I thought people say, oh, having kids is so difficult. How can you know, but it's so rewarding. I was like, how can that be? Only after we have our son, I was like, oh, I understand.
It's having children is the best thing ever, but it is not easy.
Yeah, same here. That's how I feel. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing all your insights and advice and your thoughts.
Keep your eyes out for. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.